It is here. We've got the final. Team USA against Team Canada. We will preview the game, talk about Tage Thompson, who is kind of on the team right now, but we'll get to that. And then the Amerks, number one in the AHL. That as well. Coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast here on a Thursday. And thanks for making us your first listen every day. You could catch us wherever you get your podcasts and also on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show, like and subscribe us there. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, it is a fun show. It is the final show of our international hockey calendar as Team USA matches up with Team Canada in a best-on-best showdown that we've been waiting for a long, long time. Very happy to be talking about this game. We'll preview it. We'll talk about the lineups. Tage Thompson getting the call for Team USA, what it means for tonight, and also, more importantly to me, what it means for next year. Last episode, if you missed it, be sure to check it out. We went through player by player on the Sabres roster, team by team, who is going to be at the Olympics next year in Milan from the Sabres roster. We did talk about Thompson then, and I feel like just hours after we put that show out, we already have more information about Thompson's candidacy for next year's Olympics. I think we have more information in the last 12 hours about Thompson's candidacy than we probably will have in the next 6 months at least. So a lot to get to on the Thompson front and that part of today. And I also am very excited about talking some Amerks a little bit later on in today's show. They are now number one in the American Hockey League, the American Hockey League standings with a big win last night. Devon Levi, Noah Ostlund, we've got kids down there that are thriving with a capital T. So we will get to that coming up on today's show as well. If you would like to become a member of our Locked On Sabres text club, be sure to check us out over there. And if you want to, it's just joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. You sign up there and then you're getting text updates throughout. We would have let you know immediately after or within a couple of minutes of the news that Thompson was called up by Team USA. So that's there for you. It's less than, it depends where you get your coffee. For me, it's less than a cup of coffee for one day. For maybe many others, it's the same amount as where you get your coffee on a daily basis. So very excited about today's show. So thanks for tuning in. And if you want to follow us on social media, I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports on Twitter, at Sneaky Joe and Blue Sky, and then at Locked On Sabres for the podcast Twitter account. Got all sorts of polls, let you know when episodes are being dropped, when they've gone up on YouTube and whatnot. So you can follow us there. It is game day, and I am so glad that we have this day, and I just kind of want to set up the matchup because the matchup is something that we've been waiting for a couple of days now, since we've known that this was going to be the final, and everything is met. Everything about this tournament before tonight happens. Everything about this tournament has gone as well as humanly possible. I feel very proud to have proud, not maybe the right word, fortunate to be able to experience this and to be able to watch all of this get played. Especially Sabre fans, I think will empathize with this or understand this and share in this, especially here in this city where we are starved of meaningful hockey for our own hockey team. And that's kind of where I actually really wanted to start today, is less about, play to play, player to player. We've done a lot of that, right? We've done a lot of that, especially on this show. I've been obsessed with international hockey on this show for going on 5 years. I've been banging the drum for USA's caught Canada. USA has caught Canada. And they've already proven it. Like, unless they go out tonight and look completely overwhelmed and they get shut out like 6-0, which I don't anticipate in any way. The story of this tournament is gonna be they're neck and neck. It's no longer Canada and everybody else. It's Canada, the US, and everybody else. That is the new reality in the international hockey scene. But what I'm thinking about more today, as we lead into this hockey game, is more about the average Sabre fan and more about what I hope to experience in this city tonight. I'm going downtown for this game with a bunch of buddies, and I'll be wearing my Ryan Miller Team USA jersey that I've got on right now while doing the show, and I'm super hyped about it. I'm hyped not just to go out to watch a meaningful hockey game. I'm excited to go watch the game with a giant group of people. Like, we, as a group, we are like, where can we go where there are the most people, right? Because what I want to do tonight for a hockey game is high five strangers. I want to hug strangers. That's what I want tonight. The same type of thing that you get when your team is in the playoffs, right? When the Sabres are in the playoffs and you go out to watch the game, and I'm too young to go out to bars when this happens, but when Chris Drury scores with 7 seconds to go in Game 5 against the Rangers in 2007, I imagine anybody at a bar was not just celebrating with their buddies that they're there with or their family, but also with just random guy there. Oh, let's go. Like, everybody that's within your vicinity. And that is a foreign concept nowadays to a Buffalo hockey fan. It just doesn't happen. What Bulldog from WGR had a very interesting question on a tweet that I'm going to kind of borrow from him a little bit here at Bulldog WGR. There's a lot of good replies, and you can hit him up on this too. What's the last time, as a Sabre fan, you were this excited for a hockey game? And his options were last year's playoffs, because you could have had that, right? Oilers and Panthers, Game 7. They're awarding the Stanley Cup. That's massive. Is it the gold medal game in the 2010 Olympics? Is it Game 7 against the Flyers in 2011? Or is it another one? I kind of, jokingly, just to poke fun at him, mentioned the Coyotes Tank Bowl in 2015. I was very excited for that, but I'm not going to tell you that was the right answer for this question. But basically, I think why tonight is worthy of that level of hype and excitement, more than Game 7 last year against the Oilers and the Panthers, is, like, my answer would probably be Game 7 against the Flyers in 2011. It's everybody is going to be rooting for the same team. Everybody is going to be in it together. And that is what you get when the Sabres are playing big, meaningful games, which obviously has not happened in a super long time. Tonight far exceeds Panthers-Oilers, Game 7. Sure, Game 7 Stanley Cup final is massive, but from a local perspective, who's rooting for who? Like, let's use the high-fiving strangers bar. You're not doing that. You're not doing that for Panthers-Oilers, because you don't know who's rooting for who. So this guy on your left, he might not have a rooting interest. This guy on your right, he might hate Sam Reinhart, so he's rooting for the Oilers. You might love McDavid, so you're rooting for him, or maybe you like Reinhart and you're rooting for the Panthers, or maybe you're rooting for Florida because they've never won before. Just everybody in the building is maybe got a different rooting interest, betting-wise maybe, or maybe they're just not rooting for anybody. They're just there to watch the game and experience it. This game is, they score a goal tonight, no matter who it is, on the U.S. They score a goal tonight that's meaningful. It's not like they're getting blown out. And everybody in that establishment is cheering, clapping. Maybe they're going nuts. Maybe they're doing a fist pump. Like everybody's going to be into it. And that to me is why this game tonight here in Buffalo far exceeds anything we've seen in probably a decade. Maybe there's a Sabre game in the 10-game win streak 7 years ago now that would meet this qualification in the regular season. Maybe there is a game 2 years ago when they're fighting for the playoffs. I remember the Bruins game on New Year's. As it happened, that was awesome, but not leading in. This game, it's about the hype leading in, and so glad to have it. So very excited. When we come back, let's get more into the nitty-gritty of the game, and also Tage Thompson, his presence, what it means on Team USA for today, and more so what it means for the Olympics next year. That when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Wonderful Pistachios. Emphasis on the wonderful. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. My New Year's resolution that I've been doing pretty well with so far is to eat healthier this year. And one of my favorite substitutes that I've made is substituting any of those packaged salty potato chip, pretzel, snack, whatever, goldfish, whoever. Replace that with these guys right here. Wonderful Pistachios, a lot healthier. And of course, like if you're just looking for a little snack for a game, throw them in a little bowl, and you can't beat them. Get snackin', get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Again, visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sneaky Joe DiBiase, thanks for making us your first listen every day. You everydayers, thanks for coming back day after day throughout our 14-year playoff drought that we are approaching on for the Buffalo Sabres, and we will kick fully back into Sabre mode on tomorrow's show. Other than we'll, of course, talk about what happens in the game tonight, USA-Canada, and then it'll be more about moving on to the Rangers. And Lindy Ruff has kind of set about a series of goals for the standings and how they can make the playoffs. And I got some thoughts on that, and we'll get into tomorrow the numbers of what they would actually have to do to make it. So that's coming up tomorrow. Right now, though, for tonight's game, the updates, we officially are not going to have Quinn Hughes playing for Team USA. To me, it's ridiculous. But what we did find out from Michael Russo of The Athletic, detailing this, he's very close to Bill Guerin, of course, covers the Minnesota Wild, which would make sense. Guerin kind of outlined that it might not have been the NHL's fault that Quinn Hughes is playing. I mean, it somewhat is, because GMs actually asked the league in early November, hey, can we have bigger rosters for the Four Nations tournament so that we have a couple of extra bodies in case of injury or sickness? And the NHL said no, which is absurd. And obviously they made a massive mistake because we've had this circus of roster manipulation back and forth and all these questions in the week of the game. So I'm not absolving the NHL in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes to Quinn Hughes specifically, what it sounds like by reading Russo is that Hughes wanted to play, Team USA wanted him to play, Hockey Canada had no problem with him playing, and while no one from the league was sourced in the story as saying we would have let Hughes play, the way I read it, whether it's Guerin and his actions and the way he spoke, it came off to me that they could have got the league to let him play. That they might have been able to convince the league to let him play. But it never got that far. Because Vancouver are the ones that set up the roadblock that said, nope, not happening. Quinn Hughes is not going to Boston. He is not playing in this tournament. He did not receive clearance from the Vancouver Canucks to go play in this tournament. He skated in a non-contact uniform 2 days ago. He skated in a regular uniform yesterday, which would say, hey, he's cleared for contact. He's good to go. That tells me the Canucks said to Quinn Hughes, I know you're cleared, but you haven't played in 3 weeks. And we've got a playoff chase here down the stretch. You're not going. That, to me, is what happened, if you kind of read the Russo piece and all the other details that all the insiders have. And sure, that's their right. That is their right, and I get it. They have a season here. I'll throw you a conspiracy theory, though, if you want it. The Vancouver Canucks told the Americans' best defenseman, you're not allowed to go play for Team USA. A team that is based in Canada, has a Canadian owner who's from Vancouver, and has a Canadian president of hockey operations in Jim Rutherford, and a Canadian head coach in Rick Tocchet. Interesting. Canada. Oh, hey, USA best defenseman. No, you're not going. I'm just saying, I wonder what would have happened if Quinn Hughes was Canadian. You know, would they have let him play? Because, again, I think it's their right to tell him no, but I'm calling a little bit of BS here. I feel like if it was Canada, they might have let Quinn Hughes play, but because it's Team USA, you know, maybe they err on the side of caution in only that situation. So, you know, conspiracy theories. And I don't think that one's that far-fetched, to be honest. Now, with all the other injuries the U.S. is dealing with, Charlie McAvoy out, defenseman, that's another story. Forward, Austin Matthews, Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, with all those guys dealing with their injuries, Tage Thompson receives the call from Bill Guerin, hey, can you come to Boston in case we need you? He does. So Thompson is in Boston, and he was not allowed to practice, so he did not practice with the team, and he's not allowed to play unless multiple guys miss, which did happen the other night, but it doesn't seem as though that's going to happen. Mike Sullivan said everybody that is able to go is going to go. McAvoy is the only one. He's in the hospital with an infection. Charlie McAvoy, the only player that has been ruled out for Team USA. So, and again, if one American missed, Chris Kreider would play. If two did, then Thompson would go in. But Matthews, Tkachuk, and Tkachuk are all going to stay in, and those are the three to watch. So Thompson's not going to get in the lineup. So the 20 minutes of, oh my gosh, Tage might play that happened on social media yesterday, it was fun to imagine him entering the lineup for Team USA, but sadly, we are not going to get that. Now, that doesn't mean to me that him getting the call from Team USA is meaningless, because what it shows me is that Tage is on Bill Guerin's radar, and he's on his immediate radar. I would have wondered if you told me, hey, the Team USA, in fact, I think I said it on the show this week, they're going to call up a forward because they've run into injuries. I even said I would be mentally bracing for them adding some past his prime veteran player only because the guy's played in big games in the past, even if he's still not a great hockey player. You know, I could have totally seen that happening. Or I could have seen, hey, maybe Cole Caulfield could have been the next call-up. Caulfield is a skilled player in his own name, right? Caulfield has 26 goals in 56 games this year, and has scored 20 goals 4 years in a row. Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars did not get the call to this tournament. That's a guy who had 100 points 2 years ago, and this year is just barely below a point-a-game player. There are some great options for Team USA that were not at this tournament. And who'd they call? They called Tage. So, in my opinion, that makes it a lot more likely that he is on the Olympic team next year than I would have thought a day ago. Like a day ago, I would have thought, okay, he should be, but I still wonder, what do they think of him? What does Guerin think of him? Does he think all he is a big shot and he's not a complete hockey player and I don't have a spot for that? I've got enough big shots on my lineup. That I don't think that he gets called if that's his opinion of Tage Thompson. And what it could be is reinforcement that the only reason Thompson wasn't on this team was that he was dealing with an injury when they named it. I'm more believing that today than I ever have before because he got the call. Maybe you say I'm putting too much weight in one phone call, right? Robertson's in Texas. Maybe they pick Thompson because it's a shorter flight. That's possible. But I want to take stock in Guerin adding Thompson for how meaningful this game was. And if he really wanted Robertson, then Robertson would have jumped on a plane and he would have been there, from Texas. It's not prohibitive to make a different decision. So I'm taking stock in it. And I think now it's likely Thompson's on the Olympic team next year. If he stays healthy and he plays well from now until next February, I'm really liking his chances after this news that came out yesterday. When we come back, Canada, by the way, no lineup changes. Binnington's going to remain in net. They are sticking with him, staying faithful to him throughout the entire tournament. No Aiden Hill, never got a shot. Binnington beginning to end. Obviously, Connor Hellebuck for Team USA. If you head over to our partners over at FanDuel Sportsbook, even pick them. Nobody's favored in this game. It is mano y mano, USA and Canada. Nobody is favored over the other. Just after 8 o'clock on ESPN. Reminder that these games have been starting more like 8:15, 8:10. So, get to it at 8, but you'll probably get some festivities beforehand. When we come back, it's going great down in Rochester. And that's putting it mildly. We'll tell you what's going on with the Amerks when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, it is 15 days until the trade deadline. Be sure to stay tuned to Locked On Sabres throughout the next couple of weeks. We will have full coverage of the trade deadline here on the Locked On Podcast Network, especially with the Sabres, more specifically here on this show. And that'll be Jason Zucker, Jordan Greenway, Dylan Cousins, and many others. What's going on down on the farm? Well, it couldn't be going better. So last night, the Amerks are at home. They're playing Cleveland, the Cleveland Monsters, and they had kind of been a little bit more back and forth. They lost a game on Sunday. They lost last week. They got beat by Syracuse badly, but they've been mixing in their wins. Last night, but they've been hanging around the top of the standings in the AHL, not just in their division, not just in their conference, but the entire league. So last night, they're playing Cleveland at home, and I'm tracking the game on Twitter, social media. And I see that they take a 2-0 lead. I see a highlight reel goal that ends in Noah Ostlund banging it home on the back door. And I'm like, all right, let me put this game on for at least, a period. Let me throw it on for a little bit. So I'm watching, and man, they're just so impressive. I'm not watching every game for the Amerks, but I'm trying to, watch here and there just to know enough about, what's going on with certain players on the season. And I'll watch much more once we get closer to playoff time. And then in the playoffs, I am dialed in. But the Amerks, Ostlund, man, I'm so impressed with. He is just, I think he's got it. I think he's really got it. I don't want to overreact to, me watching one period of Amerks hockey, but I've got Hadi Kalakash in my mind, who is our, if you're not familiar with Hadi, he is the Locked On NHL Prospects host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And he had the hot take in Sabre prospect land a couple of years ago when they had drafted Savoy, they had drafted Kulich and Ostlund all in the first round. And for almost everybody, Ostlund was number 3. Like, I know he went second, but Kulich was so impressive, and a lot of people liked Kulich, and then he started so hot in Rochester, historically good for a teenager, that everyone was like all over Savoy and all over Kulich. And Hadi was on our show saying, I think Ostlund's going to be the best of the 3. He's like, I think he's going to be the best of the 3. He's going to be a number 2 center in the NHL. And the more I watch Ostlund, I've got Hadi in my head, like, This kid's got it. He's got some tools. He's got some skill. He's got to get bigger before he, of course, makes the jump to the NHL, but we're not worried about that for right now. It's more about him continuing to dominate at the AHL level. And what a tale of two seasons. Last night, he adds the empty netter at the end. But again, that first goal was awesome. So 2 more goals for Noah Ostlund. Isak Rosen continues to play great. He had 2 assists on the night. One of my texters pointed this out. I hadn't realized this, and I'm not a big plus-minus guy. I don't think it's really that meaningful in today's world of hockey, but Nikita Novikov being a plus 23 is pretty incredible. And we've mentioned Novikov as someone that we expect to get me and Hottie, someone that is going to get a look at the NHL level at some point as he continues to impress on the AHL level. So there's a lot of guys to look at from that game last night and this season and with the Amerks that have been impressive, which is, by the way, bearing the lead here. Should have led with this. They're now first place in the entire AHL. That's the Amerks have the best record in the entire American Hockey League. So hats off to them. They're doing an incredible job. Devon Levi with the shutout last night. And Levi, I like to mention Bulldog again here. You know, he had a good morning, I think, on Twitter. The take that I saw from him that I wholeheartedly agreed with. Someone was tweeted about Levi and his numbers this year, that he is 17, 6, and 2. He has a 2.26 goals against average. He has one of the better save percentages in the AHL. And there was a question about James Kurdziel on Twitter asked, has anyone ever been so good in the AHL and so bad in the NHL? And you've heard me on this show defend Levi in the NHL. Last year, his advanced numbers were much better than you would anticipate. This year, not much defending. It was pretty bad. No really work around that. But Bulldog had the right take on this with Levi as he continues to dominate down in the AHL. The Sabres organization thrusting him in the NHL straight out of college was a bit misguided. And Bulldog said, I'm inclined to throw out his prior NHL time and start with a clean slate whenever he makes it back to Buffalo. And that's my approach right now. Like, there are some positive signs to look at from Levi in the past, whether it was the first 7-game stretch when he got here, whether it's some of those goal statement of expected numbers that he had last year. There's really not much this year. But whenever he does show back up, if he's a full-time NHLer next year, or hell, even if it's 2 years from now, he shouldn't have been in the NHL yet. 99% of goalies are not in the NHL yet. Not on a regular basis. Maybe they get a game here, a game there, but they're not a full-time starter. So I agree. Whenever Levi shows back up, that is when it's time to all right, now we start the clock on him. Now we decide, what is he? Throw out what he did before with the Sabres. That's the approach that I'm going to take. Between now and the end of the year, though, the Amerks, they really have what it takes to win the whole thing, to win the Calder, because what do you need from an AHL for an AHL championship? From my limited experience and knowledge watching the American Hockey League compared to the NHL, at least in my mind, I think of you probably would want 3 things, right? That's more than just I need good forward defenseman and good goaltending. I'll list good goaltending, though, as number 1. I need one of the 3. And Levi, one of the best goalies in the AHL. So Rochester's got one of the best goalies in the AHL. Check. You want good veterans, and they've got that. Brett Murray, 20-plus goals already on the season. Big physical forward. He had one of the nice setups last night against Cleveland. If you want to count Lucas Rusek, or if you want to count Mason Jobst as this as well, they've got some veterans. For me, though, the most important thing, maybe number 1, that you need to win the entire thing in the AHL, because everyone's going to have kids. Everyone's going to have prospects. How good are your prospects compared to the other teams? And right now, Isak Rosen, and if you want Anton Wahlberg to some extent, and right now, it's about Noah Ostlund. Those guys are the ones that I think are really going to drive what the Amerks can do between now and the end of the year, because you'll have your AHL veterans that are perform well, but can you get the development? Can you get the production from the high level offensive talent that are playing at an underage? That's to me a huge key for the Amerks. And right now, I don't see any reason to believe that Roseanne or Ostlund are going to slow down. Ostlund, maybe we'll see in the playoffs, right? Because he is undersized. He is very thin. The Amerks got him listed at 171. He looks it. So how does he fare in playoff hockey when things get more physical? That will be a good question. But I'm not gonna, throw any water on the fire right now for him. He's on fire as of late, and you hope it keeps up. So exciting. Well, we'll have to transition a little bit, as we typically do in the spring, to, half Locked On Sabres, maybe a third Locked On Amerks. Maybe throw a little Locked On Bandits in as well. That's what the Sabres have given us down the stretch here. All right, so Amerks. If you want to check a game out, by the way, they're home for the next couple of nights. They're going to be home against Belleville on Friday, Toronto on Saturday, and then Wilkes-Barre, Scranton on Wednesday. So, hey, maybe Saturday at 5 against the Toronto Marlies. If you want to go see some top hockey, you're going to want to go see what Ostlund looks like, you'll have plenty of chances to do that coming up. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Enjoy USA Canada. Go Team USA. Remember, they're not playing for a gold medal. They're playing for a championship trophy. So going for gold in a sense, but really they're going for this trophy that they could win tonight and really establish themselves as being on Canada's level if they're able to win tonight. There will be no disputing that in any corner of the universe if they're able to win this game, and any way they could do it tonight against Canada in Boston. So enjoy it on ESPN. If you are looking for a more detailed breakdown of or more preview of tonight's game, be sure to head over to our sister station, Locked On NHL. As you make us your first listen, be sure to make them your second listen on the Locked On NHL podcast. And of course, if you're always looking for your football fix, Joe Marino's got you covered over on Locked On Bills. There's been some James Cook talk as of late with Joe, but he'll start transitioning some draft talk and more so free agency, because free agency is going to happen first for the Bills. So check him out wherever you get your podcast for both of those shows. Thanks for listening today to the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll talk to you tomorrow on tonight's game and the Sabres returning to action this weekend here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.